Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be going over my October reads. I read 9 books in the month of October, so we'll go through a little recap and I'll show you what I've read. I am filming this video a little bit early. I am traveling the next couple weeks, and so I just wanted to film this ahead of time and kind of make sure I had a video for you guys. The first book that I read in the month of October is The Cemetery of Untold Stories by Julia Alvarez. I really enjoyed this book. This is kind of a character study, and it takes a good look at human nature and how people behave. It takes multiple characters who seem unrelated but whose stories end up overlapping with each other. This book had a lot of Dominican trauma. It follows the wife of a Dominican dictator and how hard her life was. I felt like reading this book was listening to some of the elderly tell stories about their life and the wars and the troubles that they've been through. I really liked the different points of view. The only point of view that I didn't really like in this book was Alma, who is the writer of the Untold Stories. I thought her point of view was a little boring and just not as intriguing as the characters of her stories. I also really enjoyed Julia Alvarez's inclusion of Dominican history. I don't know anything about Dominican history, and so seeing these little tidbits of history and the dictator that was in the Dominican Republic was very interesting. I liked the inclusion of some Spanish slang in there. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. The ending did catch me a little off guard. I thought this was a book about stories being mad that their story wasn't told and them trying to convince the author how to tell them and to share them. But really, the book was emphasizing the how and why some stories are left untold and why some stories should only be shared by the person who experienced them, and why those people might choose not to share their own story. Like I said, I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was a great time. I read it for Hispanic Heritage Month at the beginning of October, and I ended up rating this a 4.25 stars. The next book that I read in October was The Shining by Stephen King. I read this as part of my spooky reading vlog, where I try a few horror books. This one I was pleasantly surprised with. I usually am not a fan of slower paced books, but I thought that the slow pacing really worked for this. It helped build that uneasy atmosphere as it alternated between kind of normal, casual, everyday life and some creepy event happening. I felt very uneasy reading this. It did creep me out at points. I think that this was also a very good commentary on alcoholism and how people deal with their inner demons. If you want to see more of my thoughts about this while I was reading it, you can watch my spooky vlog, which I will link down in the description below. I ended up rating this a 3.5 stars just because towards the end of the book, some of the writing and details felt a bit repetitive and just unnecessary. I thought it was a very good creepy book, and I thought it put me in the Halloween mood very well. The next book that I read in October is Strange Houses by Uketsu. This was also for my spooky reading vlog. This is a Japanese mystery horror that uses floor plans to kind of tell a horror story. I really enjoyed this book, but I did not think that this was a horror at all. I am honestly very surprised that it's marketed as horror. It feels a lot more like a mystery. The writing style and the mixed media felt like you were just reading through a journalist's notebook and kind of following two friends go down this little rabbit hole of floor plans. It was very interesting. It was a very quick read. Some of the explanations in this book felt a bit far-fetched, but I honestly didn't really care. It didn't bother me that much because it just felt like two friends contemplating and daydreaming about some houses in Japan. I gave this 4 stars. Then after that, I read the book Jasmine, Flowers, and Pounds of Sugar. This is an arc. I can't remember who wrote it, but this was a new release for the month of October that I read for the new release challenge on Herkiad. Jasmine, Flowers, and Pounds of Sugar is a high school romance about these two rivals in high school who grew up as next door neighbors and kids of competing restaurants. It follows the story of one of the kids trying to save their parents' restaurant and the girl trying to help him. This book was a bit disappointing to me. The relationship was hard to root for. There was a lot of miscommunication in there, which is not my favorite trope. I don't really think it's anybody's favorite trope, to be honest, but there was a ton of miscommunication. I thought that the main characters were very immature. I was also really disappointed because this is a book about Indian Americans, and I was expecting and hoping that there would be some culture infused in it, but any Indian culture was very surface level. It wasn't really mentioned, which felt out of place considering the emphasis that it put on the two competing Indian restaurants and the fact that the whole main premise of the book is one of the Indian restaurants trying to cater an Indian wedding. So I was expecting and hoping for more Indian culture. The book was still a very quick and easy read. It was still fun. There were moments that I enjoyed. I think that the characters still had some good moments, even though I don't really think they were compatible at all, and their miscommunication issues were frustrating. Reading the book felt very nostalgic for high school. It very much gave the energy of a high school relationship. I think it was depicted well. Overall, I think this might be a better read for younger readers, which makes sense since young adult is the intended audience. That being said, I rated this book a 3.5 stars out of 5. Then the next book that I read in October was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This is one of the books on my October TBR. I know that this is a very popular book talk book, especially in 2020 or 2021. Whenever it first came out, I know this was very, very popular, but I do think it was overhyped. It reads a lot like a YA book. The messaging felt very surface level. I thought that this book was littered with cliche metaphors and those Pinterest pillow sayings, you know, like the ones that you see stitched on a pillow, the kind of like live, laugh, love type sayings that you would see. It feels like this book was written for middle schoolers, but we are following a woman in her mid-30s, I believe. And so truly this book is just about a woman in a midlife crisis. With this being centered around an adult character, I was expecting a lot more depth in the book. I thought that the overall concept of this was interesting with the parallel universes and being able to see the different lives you could have lived through books in a library, but the execution fell flat for me. I thought that A lot of the dialogue in here was just very cringy, very cheesy. I know that for some people, this probably meant something to them, and I'm glad that it did. But for me, it just fell really flat and felt superficial. So I ended up rating this a 3.25 out of 5, although I might drop that down a little bit. I think that it was pretty easy to get through, but I've definitely read better. Then the next book that we read, or the next book that I read in October, was Pumpkin Spice and Everything Nice by cicatelli-kuc. This book I read for my fall vlog vibes. This was honestly also a letdown. I thought this was going to be a cutesy adult rom-com, but it is neither adult nor rom-com. This is a self-discovery book. It follows this girl, Lucy, whose mom owns a coffee shop in a small town in New England when a big brand name coffee shop opens up across the street. And so Lucy gets very obsessed with trying to figure out how to save her mom's coffee shop and deal with that competition. I didn't enjoy this book really at all. I thought that Lucy was a very insufferable character. I thought that she was so stuck in a victim mentality and that she was incredibly mean to Jack, our male main character. I also think that the drama and focus on Pumpkin Spice and her hatred towards Pumpkin Spice was extremely juvenile. I definitely think that I was too old to be reading this book. I definitely aged out of this reading group. If you want to see that fall vlog video, I will link that in the description as well. But I ended up rating this a 2.5 stars out of 5. Then the next book that I read in October was Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book, after the last 2 books of disappointment, this book was a lifesaver. Truly. I think this is my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book ever. I think it's my favorite one that she's ever published. It follows these 2 women who are trying to follow their dreams of becoming an astronaut and going out into outer space, and it alternates between 2 timelines. One timeline is when they first join the astronaut program, and then the current day timeline is when one of them is up in space and experiences an issue in their mission. So I really enjoyed it. I think that Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing is so beautiful. It's simplistic and easy to digest. The story was a bit predictable, but I still think that the execution was really well done. I was so connected to these characters. I really loved Griff. I thought he was an amazing friend to Joan. I wish we had more page time with him, especially as Joan was going through her little self-discovery journey. I wish we could have gotten a few more supportive scenes from him. I think that the relationship in this was really good. It was so cute. I was rooting for them the entire time. During the present time scenes, when we were in the middle of the space mission, I was on edge. We were right in the middle of the action. Everyone who said that they cried in this, like, I had plenty of warning that this book could make me cry, and it made me cry. I bawled. I absolutely bawled during this book. The ending had me so, like, it destroyed me. It absolutely destroyed me. It completely gutted. I felt so gutted and raw. Oh my gosh, this book was so good. I loved it. And if you couldn't tell where I was going with this, I rated this book a 5 out of 5. Then the next book that I read in October was Fahrenheit 451 by Bradbury. I don't know if it was because I read it after reading a 5-star atmosphere, but this book also fell flat for me. I was expecting something more. Fahrenheit 451 is actually only 150 pages. The rest of this book is just essays about the book. I was kind of expecting a little bit more action in the story. The book was split into 3 parts, and I was kind of hoping for those parts to feel a little more woven together. They felt very broken, very clunky. With the hype that was going on around this book and how everyone always talks about how this is one of the most important books to be reading. This is a banned book. I was expecting something a little bit deeper, but all of the messaging felt very superficial. It felt very straightforward and a bit obvious, although this was written in the 1950s, I think. And so this might have been groundbreaking and an important warning at its time period, but now it feels a little bit like common sense. This book was a big warning signal against technology and how the overuse of technology is going to drive people apart. It's going to make human connection even harder, going to limit human intelligence among the general public. It was talking about how a lot of knowledge is going to get lost when the literacy goes down, or if people start losing and destroying books. I think a lot of this has already come to fruition and kind of exists in our current time period, which I guess could be why people think it's so important. But at least for me, it just felt very obvious. It just kind of felt like, well, yeah, duh. We kind of know that this is going to happen. We know that everyone being so focused on their devices and being so focused on people in screens, people that they see on their screens more than the people that they see in real life, is going to drive people apart and make relationships and human connections kind of fragile and non-existent almost. I don't know. It just fell a little flat for me. It wasn't what I was expecting. I think I will be rating this a 2.75 stars, maybe 3. I'm not sure yet. Somewhere around there out of 5. And then the last book that I read in October is Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian. To be completely honest, as of right now, I am still in the middle of this book, but I plan to finish this by the end of the month. I am reading this for a reading vlog. That video should have gone up last week, so you can watch that for more in-depth review and kind of my final thoughts on this book. As of right now, I am really enjoying this book. It's about queer teens in the middle of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s. It focuses a lot on the activism that occurred there. There's a lot of queer culture and history that's woven throughout this. I think the one thing that I'm missing and wish there was more of is Iranian culture. Since the main character is an Iranian American, he had moved to America from Iran. So I was really hoping that we could get more of that culture in this book, but the queer representation is amazing. I really enjoy this book. I think the characters are very relatable. I think a lot of people can learn a lot from reading it. The main thing that I'm not really enjoying in this book is the sexual conversations that are happening in here. It feels a little strange to read as a grown woman. It's uncomfortable to read teenage boys talking about teenage bodies and the sexual acts they would like to do to teenage bodies, but this book is very much an exploration of sexuality. And so I think it is important to the story to keep that in there. I think it would be very helpful to YA readers to have that kind of representation in there. But as someone who is ace and not a young adult, it is uncomfortable to read, to be honest. Right now, I am sitting at about a 4 stars. I'll put on screen what my final rating ends up being, or if you want to see my reaction to the end of this book and kind of my overall thoughts once the book is over, I will have this reading vlog linked in the description below. With that, that is the end of this video. Those are the 9 books that I've read in October. Let me know if you have read any of these and what you thought about them. And let me know in the comments down below what your favorite read of October was. If you liked this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.